at this point, we would like to ask the authors, the three partners, to come and hand over this great work that they have done to the minister in the presidency. So DPME, Gtac, NRF, and we will ask Dr. Marie to hand over the work to the minister. Yes, Okay. Thank you very much to the three partners for the work, the hard work that has been done, and the hard work that continues. Thank you very much, Minister, for your presence and for receiving this work from the partners. We will do the questions and discussion by Dr. Marie and Dr. Mercado, so that then after that we acknowledge the authors. I'll hand over to you. You do it your best way you know how.
Thank you. So this is the interesting time, I hope, for everybody online and for everybody in the room to ask any questions. As Godfrey mentioned, we have about 30 of the 80 authors that contributed to the first edition country report online, and we do have a few of the authors in the room. So David and I are going to field the questions because we know which of the authors can answer the questions, or of course, there's several of the DPME staff members here. We will also be able to request them to respond to questions. It also does not need just to be questions. You can, as authors, you're welcome to raise your hands and contribute something about the experience or your findings. So it's an open session. I think we have about 40 minutes to discuss any of the content, of the process, of the methodology. But I just want to re-emphasize and celebrate the fact that we have this amazing experience with over 80 authors from almost every university in South Africa, but also from the Medical Research Council, from the Gauteng City Region Observatory, from the HSRC, from the CSIR, from BFAP, the Food and Agricultural Policy Unit, from the DG Murray Trust. So it was lots of academics at universities and at research institutions countrywide that contributed to these almost 20 chapters in the first edition report. David, any words from you?
Okay, thank you, Mare. Mare and I have been coordinating the project, but we're meeting for the first time today physically. We have been coordinating visually since the pandemic started. Then I would like to thank all the participants that join us online and virtual. And this is the time for the participant to ask questions. But perhaps maybe we can start with the participants that are here physical. Maybe we can start with the member of the media to pose any question. And some of the authors that are here physically, they will be able to answer some of the questions. And also those authors that join us online, they will be able to respond, as Maria has indicated, and also the officials from the DPME. We can start perhaps with the member of the media if they've got a question for the authors or for the officials from the DPME.
Hi, I'm Christian Duplessis from Netwerk 24 speaking. I would like to ask the Minister, on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate South Africa's response to the COVID-19 pandemic? And please explain why you picked the score. Thank you.
Safe to say, I'm not speaking on behalf of the minister, but because I'm here and I am leading the team that's here, I'll respond using my own assessment as Godfrey. I would say 8 out of 10. There's a number of things that I rate 8 out of 10 for the initial response, how it has turned out. But what happened later on is something else. So the 8 out of 10, because there's a lot of things that have actually gone well in terms of the whole organization and the response and the coordination and deciding on the right things to do. But with that said, there were also things that didn't actually go well. So there were challenges that we experienced along the way. But to appreciate also the swift manner in which government on its part was able to correct some of the things that were not going well. There was no blueprint on how to deal with disasters like this for South Africa. So there's a lot that has actually been done. But suffice to say, the later era of the whole pandemic management, with more information, one can say some of the things could have been done differently. As you would know, everyone has their own experiences about the pandemic and how they interacted with it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Godfrey, for the response. Do we have any further question from the floor?
Mine is not from the media, it's from the floor.
Please introduce yourself when you ask a question.
I'm Petue Maduto from the National Research Foundation. I'm just wondering about the suggestions which were made by the World Bank peer reviewer. Looking at the lessons that can be learned and the report itself, you can see that the report is a little bit high level, and there are so many tools which were developed during the time of COVID. For instance, to just look at spreaders of COVID, look at vulnerable groups within the time. All these tools were used, and they seem to be at a very detailed level compared to the high level work of the report. And yet there's so much which can be learned from them. For instance, Western Cape is said to be repurposing the COVID dashboard into a crime monitoring tool so that they can respond effectively to crime and be able to anticipate crime as a consequence of the tools which were being used to assess and to combat COVID. So in our case, do we get to that deep level because I do believe that those minute kind of ways of learning, how, for instance, sanitizers were developed by a university in the Eastern Cape, how we developed our own tools to enable the whole thing of breathing within hospitals. It's in the methodology and how these tools were developed, where we can learn how to come up with new innovations in future. So that level of detail of lessons, which go beyond high level policy direction, will assist us. So did we look into that, or are we looking at it in the new edition? Thanks.
Okay, thanks for the inputs that you have identified from the reflection by the peer reviewer from the World Bank. Then we are in the process of writing the second edition COVID-19 country report, and most of the issues that were identified by the peer reviewer from the World Bank, some of them, they were incorporated in the first edition, but those gaps that are going to be incorporated or addressed as part of the second edition. Then the issue that you have raised in terms of that the report is a high level, I think is the guide that we provided. I mean, even now, if you can look into the report, it's 700, more than 700 page. Then we had to limit in terms of the pages. Then a number of chapters, they've went into detail, and they put some of the details in the annexure. Some of them, they are annexure to different chapters. But for the report, so that we standardize the approach for all the chapters, the 9 chapters that we have. Then we have to guide to say at least each chapter should be at least 25, but not more than 40 pages. Then a number of authors, they've complained about some of the detail that you have indicated in terms of leaving a lot of some of this detailed information. But yeah, I think also in the second edition, I think that will be the limitation, because otherwise the volume of the report is going to be too huge. But they have to cover some of the issues that they've deemed that these are critical, that can benefit maybe in terms of the nation and the other countries to learn from us with regard to the intervention that we implemented as government. I think that's what I can say.
What I would also like to ask any of the authors online, maybe Martina, your chapter on communication made very specific recommendations, or any of the other authors that would like to contribute in answering the question around how did the research and the findings actually make a specific difference on the ground, and are there any recommendations that you would like to share?
Mari, would you like me to address that?
Yes, please, Martina. Thank you.
Okay.
Martina de la Cote, she was convener of the communication chapter in the book.
Thank you, and good morning, everyone. I'm logging in from Cape Town. As Dr. Kirsten indicated, I was part of a team of researchers looking at the communications response during the COVID pandemic, and how government and the private sector and the community media sector all kind of responded to the challenges of providing information to citizens in all the languages and through all the mediums, given that especially during the period of the intense lockdowns, level 5, level 4, and level 3, there was a challenge, for example, within the print media sector and so forth. We went through an extensive process of, and I must just point that this first edition covers the period up to and including March 2021. So it does not cover the period April 2021 onwards, where certain issues around government communications and the digital vibes issue started flagging themselves. So in our period of the reporting, we looked at how GCIS was able to launch a huge public information campaign. We looked at issues of language. We looked at issues of the role the SABC played. We looked at kind of emerging initiatives such as COVID communications, an NGO that was formed to help address communications, information in all languages. And broadly speaking, our recommendations were fed through a number of forums to GCIS and other stakeholders. And we recommended an enhanced use of multilingual communications, even though GCIS does use all 11 languages. We felt more could be done. We felt more could be done towards creating forums where public, private, community, media stakeholders can actually engage with GCIS. And I believe this is one of the things that was done, that there were forums created and strengthened that brought communications partners together. Yeah, and across the board, I mean, one of our findings was that the tone of the communications was quite given, especially in the early stage of the lockdown was very driven by a kind of a security perspective. And we felt that if the communications had been toned towards humanitarian support rather than security support, there would have been less conflict initially, because in the initial period of the lockdown, there was quite a lot of community level conflict. Yeah, but on the whole, we felt that our recommendations were heard, and GCIS and other structures of communication were able to take these on board. And in our second edition, we are looking at conducting a spending analysis to evaluate how much government spent on communications across all departments. Because one of the challenges became clear to us is that although GCIS is the body with all the expertise to be able to effect communications campaigns, often they don't, or in many cases, they don't get the cooperation of other national departments, sister departments, in using GCIS services. So it's certainly something we are looking at across the board. How much is government spending on communications to mitigate COVID over these past 3 years? Has there been an effective coordination around communications expenditure? Has there been value for money? And what data can we extract? And we're working closely with National Treasury on this and the Gtac team to extract lessons on how communications expenditure helped direct important public health messaging to South Africans. And the other thing to note that we picked up in our first edition was the issue of digital access. And we noted that the Department of Communications and Digital Technologies made great efforts and was part of great innovation as far as using WhatsApp technology is concerned and digital technologies. But we also recognize that the digital divide persists, and that's something that we need to ensure is addressed. And I'm quite convinced that it is being addressed. Thank you.
Thank you, Martina. Before we go to the next question, are there any other authors that would like to also offer examples?
I'm Bernd Rosenkranz. I'm a convener of Chapter 2 on Leadership and Governance from Germany, calling in from Germany. And so it's actually not only an effort by South Africans, but also by people internationally with South Africa in the heart. Having said that, what we are doing is also to assist, and that's, I think, also most other authors doing that, is in publication or is conveying the message, is providing publication. So just by chance today will be a publication about, together with chapter 3 authors and chapter 2 authors and others, in Nature Human Behavior on the end of state of disaster. So that's another way of communicating. We had, just as an example on communication issues, was a very interesting interview that we had with Bishop Mpumelwana about the involvement of the local communities and better and improved communication with the local communities on the ground across the country with different languages, different ways needed to communicate. And the idea is to have another interview with him now for the second edition of the country report, and then also take that as an opportunity to discuss about ways on how to improve the communication. So that's a bit from our side. Communication by publications, interviews, discuss with interview partners, and assist them, and also discuss about how they see further opportunities to improve some of the findings that we have actually observed. Thank you.
Okay, any other responses or further questions? We see that there is a question on the chat box. I'm not sure whether Professor Moodley or Ronica Moodley is still online to respond to that question, if you can see it. Let me read it.
Okay, I think the question that is directed to Professor Vim is in relation to the intervention, that there have been more intervention on the DHET and less with regards to the community based intervention. Then if it's online, then if you can also respond with regards to.
Okay, while we wait, any other questions from this room or from the online participants? Yes.
This is Noxula from the NRF. Just have thought or not really a question. South Africa has been quite forefront technologically responding on the technology aspect of COVID. But it seems that these pockets are still concentrated on previously advantaged universities, which, as we know, that universities are at the pockets and the leading forefront of disaster response. So if you look at, for example, with COVID, we know that UKZN, UCT, and currently Professor Tulu is moving to Stellenbosch, and it's been quite concentrated on those in this technology response. What is happening in previously disadvantaged universities to try and put them a bit on par in order to be prepared for the next type of disaster. It may not be health, but technology, or putting university at the forefront of the response of such disaster.
Thank you for that question. Before, I also want to ask anybody online to respond to that. In the second edition, we have a new special chapter just on the contribution of research institutions and academia to the different components of COVID, whether that's of a medical nature or any other research that was done and had made a difference internationally. But like you rightly said, Professor Tulio de Oliveira, I mean, his new institute is still a combination of UKZN and others, now hosted at Stellenbosch University. But I hear your question and whether there's enough attention given to marginalized universities, if I could call it that, or marginalized scholars. We do know that Professor de la Villera's Institute provides a lot of bursaries with international funding, but exactly who benefits from that, I'm not sure. So if there are anybody online that would also like to contribute to that answer, and if you did not hear the question, it was whether there are sufficient funding and opportunities for universities that's not part of the core research to work on the different challenges that this pandemic offered. If there's any responses from the floor or from the room, Lenore? The author of the new chapter is not online, but this chapter was not included in the first edition. But in the process of writing the first edition, we realized that we missed two very important chapters, one on the contribution of research institutions and academia, and the other on a very dedicated chapter on the role of the private and business sector. We had a chapter on civil society contribution, but we did not attend sufficiently to business and private sector who came to the party. So I'm sorry that we can't give you a full answer, but thank you for raising that. And I will ask Grace, who is the author of or the convener of the chapter, to respond to you in writing. Lenore, yes.
I'll just add to that on the institutions, the universities. I think what's is dramatic is that we now do have a large research base and large numbers of researchers pivoted to work on COVID as soon as it became clear that the pandemic was serious and would hit us really hard. So when the first report was beginning, and even through to the end of last year, there were very few research reports. And last count, I lead the vulnerability chapter, and when I looked a couple of weeks ago, there was something like 1,000 articles in a very narrow search that I did. So I think all of us are going to be overwhelmed. And then the challenge with that is the way in which, because research is necessarily pivoted with the support of research institutions and universities and funding programs and so on, what then happens to other areas of research that are also important.
Thank you, Lenore. Lenore Manderson is the convener of the chapter that works on the impact on vulnerable groups. Dr. Mercado?
Okay.
We've just been provided with this information on communication and how it has been institutionalized through our government communication sections. I'm just wondering about then the success that we have had in communicating, for instance, the vaccines, the boosters, the effects of vaccines, clotting, and all of that. How successful have we been? And then the institutionalization of the report, where will that lie when there are components of it which we feel need to be utilized in implementing some of the recommendations? Because if we've been successful in communication, then how have we fared in the vaccine component, side effects, clots, the fact that every 6 months we have to have boosters and all of that? To what extent are we knowledgeable as the South African society around those elements? And when we started getting vaccinated, and this report, how has it been institutionalized to spread the word or to communicate those elements? Thanks.
Okay, thanks for the question. I'm going to request Martina maybe to respond, or Charles, who is online, one of the authors, maybe to respond. Martina, do you want to come in?
Okay, thank you. I will, just as I leave. Firstly, I apologize, I have to leave soon, but that's a very important question, and it is actually the focus area of the second edition, together with the spending analysis I mentioned earlier. So the research team is applying its mind to the vaccine rollout period and the lessons learned. Our preliminary findings will be shared in August of 2022. So I'm sorry if I can't address your question immediately. It would be before the research team have managed to apply their minds to the data. However, definitely the recommendations are geared towards ongoing challenges. It's not the first pandemic, and it won't be the last. And when it comes to vaccine, the relationship between vaccine rollout campaigns and the public at large, there's huge lessons to be learned that can then be taken on board for government to future such pandemic scenarios. So I hope that helps. And if there's any other questions, please contact the organizers and we will try our best to give you written feedback.
Okay, thanks, Martina. Any other author who want to add with regards to the question that was posed?
No, since the question concerned vaccination, this is Charles. I am leading the vaccination aspect, and I think we are analyzing the data that we have collected, and we will have a preliminary report in August, and the second edition will focus, we'll have a great deal on the vaccination issues. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Charles. Yeah, I think the findings and recommendation will be available in August, as they've indicated, as part of the second edition that they didn't cover as part of the first edition. As you are aware that the vaccine rollout it mostly covered after the report was produced. Do we have any other question before we close, Mara? In terms of the time, program director, are we still fine, or we must wrap up? Okay. Any last question so that we can wrap up the session?
Or any of the authors that are online that would like to speak about the process, the experience. It was very unique for us to work as a tripartite group of the NRF, the DPME and Gtac in managing this process, and to have the expertise of almost 100 authors from across the country, and everything happened virtually. So for 2 years and 2 months, we've been working on this, and today is the first in-person meeting for some of us. So it was an interesting experience to author a huge report like that, virtually almost. But in a sense, I think it obviously it is possible, and it's much cheaper. Nobody flew around and booked food and rooms. And then also very important, all the authors worked pro bono. And the enthusiasm to me as the facilitator and coordinator was amazing, that everybody was so eager to contribute and continue to do research and interview anybody that they could possibly in government interview around the particular sectoral aspects. Also, I do need to mention online is Dr. Janine Thorne, who pulled all the chapters together and did both a technical and a language edit. And because the chapters were authored by so many different authors, it was a very important job to quality control and to make it read as a story, like our international review also said. It's almost a storybook of the first year of the COVID pandemic in the country. So any further questions?
Marie, it's Lucia Annelich here, if I may.
Thank you. Yes, Lucia Annelich was the convener for the agricultural chapter. Thank you, Lucia.
Thank you. Yes, the agriculture and the food supply chain, which was chapter 6.2, I convened. I don't want to go into the chapter in any way. What I actually want to do is thank all the groups, not only the researchers, but in particular, all the government departments involved, as well as the National Research Foundation. This has been a tremendous effort. It is actually bigger than that. It was monumental, to be honest. And to bring everyone together in the way that you have done this and coordinated all the chapters and reviewing and changing and sending back for further review from time to time, having constant feedback and updates and workshops. It was quite something to coordinate. And I really want to emphasize that we are very appreciative of how you went about this as a group, and the results I think is an excellent one. And I think as a country we can stand extremely proud of what we have achieved in this regard. So congratulations to you all, and it was a pleasure for me to be involved, and indeed it was an honor. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lucia. Much appreciated for the whole group.
Okay, I think from myself, thank you for for the inputs. There is a hand from Professor Diale. Professor Diale.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. It has been a very difficult task at the beginning of putting together the information that was necessary to make sure that we are able to report properly to the government. And I really appreciate, Mari, your leadership and the whole team that was with you, and also pulling into the team that we were leading there, where I was originally the leader. The communications people from Rhodes University, they have contributed greatly towards making sure that this project comes to where it was. There were lots of questions which were difficult to answer from the beginning, and then being confused also by the continuous fake news that were appearing many times in many different forms of media, from the newspapers, from the TV, and from all the other media. But then by the thinking skills of all the team that was there, we're able to put together the work that has been done. And I want to acknowledge all the people who at the beginning, during the difficult times of trying to put the report together, they continued to give their ideas and allowing those who are able to pull it to where it is now, that they were able to open space for others. Thank you so much for this great work. Congratulations, all the authors.
Thank you, Matsi. I also see Professor Durham, Raymond Durham, contributed all the information in the report on the mining sector. Raymond?
Yeah, thank you, Mari. Excuse me. I just want to say from our side, it was, fascinating to be part of it, but it certainly continues. Just 2 weeks ago, we had our annual meeting of what we call our integrated mine health and safety research group. So we had a seminar, and there we had, and we focused on the whole response of the industry to COVID, and we had representatives, of course, from academia, from engineering, from public health, but also from labor, from the various unions, from the employers, the various mining companies, and the Minerals Council of South Africa, from the Mine Health and Safety Council, so that's government as well, and from the Mandela Mining Precinct. So this document that we put together provided a very, very valuable basis for our discussion and a foundation to go forward in our sector. So Mari, thank you to you and your team for pulling this all together.
Thank you, Prof. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I think we can close this session of question and discussion. Thank you.
Thank you ever so much, Dr. Makado and Dr. Kirsten. Without any further ado, let's take Dr. Seppo Hachigonta from NRF to do the acknowledgement of the authors of this work that has been done.
Good morning, colleagues. 2 years ago, before COVID hit, if we were requested to bring together 80, 90 experts, both from government, private sector, civil society, in record speed within weeks to work on such an initiative, I personally would have scratched a bit of my head and said, we need more time, we need more money, we need more resources. And before I proceed, just to acknowledge and to thank you for participating, Honorable Minister, who's not here now, the DDG senior colleagues from the NRF, our senior executives, from DPME, Gtac, media, our academics who are here, and everybody who's joining us online. Thanks a lot for giving us this opportunity to present this amazing work that has been presented today. And as you might be aware, despite the many challenges that COVID has brought to us, there's a lot of lessons that have been made within this process. And just to flag out, as many of the speakers have done so in the morning, the issues around coordination, partnerships, and how we can collectively, as a country, as teams, we can work together to address some of these challenges that we have in South Africa, in the continent, and even beyond. My role is a bit quick. It's basically to go back to our academics who've played a very role, academics, researchers, both in the universities. We had 17 plus universities participating, as Marie said, more than 5 prominent research councils in South Africa, private sector, and even experts within the government who were participating as part of this build up to this year, to this innovation. And to just thank the coordinators or the conveners as well of the initiative. We can't mention you all, as well as the authors. Thank you very much for the momentum, for the guidance, for connecting the dots, for the sleepless nights, and just the energy that was put in at such a short notice. We remember, yes, emails that were sent to you, and even the phone calls that were done between you and the different coordinating teams, just to make sure that the meetings went well. And for the workshops, I know it was a lot of workshops that we held, the weekly workshops. Many thanks for availing yourself to participate in the events. Going forward as well, just an emphasis on the lessons. I think we need to continue learning. And before this initiative started, we were already in discussions with Gtac, looking at how best we can start creating these platforms where we get academic or researchers to be providing input to the policy system and society. When COVID hit, it was an opportunity for us to even start piloting this type of initiative, if you speak of science to policy at scale, short period of time. And going forward, we look forward to even continuing with this momentum, working with academics, researchers, to look at how best we can start being involved in all these government and other activities within South Africa and beyond. And as well, thanks to the international colleagues who were able to participate in this event. It wasn't just universities in South Africa. There were international bodies that were involved, expertise that were involved, just to acknowledge their input, and as well to acknowledge the presence of the minister and the DDG and the DGs. I think it's very much appreciated to be part of this journey from the beginning, the inception of the initiative, even as we walk this journey now, the report and other activities beyond the report. Their presence actually brings in that the value of the collaboration and the value that they see in the reports and the contributions from the researchers and the academics. Beyond that as well, I want to actually thank the coordinators who've worked tirelessly, Marie, Puleng, Teko from NRF, Gtac, DPME, Jeffrey. I think your work can never be understated. You've done quite an amazing job just to coordinate all these engagements and make sure that we end up where we are now and even continue beyond what we're doing now, the second phase and other engagements, even beyond COVID. We are speaking of the energy issues, poverty issues, this co-creation of ideas, these joint efforts that we have today, I think should continue going forward. And lastly, I just trust that we will continue the conversations. I'm looking forward to our next steps with Gtac and DPME. We've as well got very good and the potential initiatives that we've thought through that we need to engage with you. And of course, we work with the researchers, the academics. This is not just from the government perspective. It's not in silo as well, just from academia or the funder perspective. We want to start as we are co-creating the what next will involve you going forward. And thanks a lot for working pro bono. I know it was a lot of time. It's always difficult to, the amount of work that goes in without the payments that in normal cases will go with it. But just a big thank you to all the academics and all the researchers, much appreciated. And before I leave, just maybe a big round up of applause to our academics. Please join me to do that.